Hello. I think we're working here.
Now, yeah, the link was way better.
I think we're all coming online. I'm still learning this. I feel like we're all gonna have master's degrees in video platforms by the time this pandemic is over, and they should all ask us how to improve them.
Yeah, why did we go with this one and not another one platform?
You know, I have found that no matter which one you do, everybody's got another preference. So, okay, I can't find Jen, and Sam is here. I need to go find Jen. Hold on. Let's see here. Try both, and neither are working. Okay. Jen, let's see. Oh gosh. Jen. You join me. Okay, let's try this, Jen. We're waiting on Jen, and I'll send her another link. Don't know Jen. Okay, Jen, are you there? Are you in? I see you. Can you hear me?
Hallelujah, yes.
Great. All right. I believe I know we have a quorum, and looks like Susanna, you were able to join us as well, which is great, wonderful. Well, we'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. I will share my screen. So in the documents, I have everything that you, can you see my screen? Yes, no?
Yep.
Okay, great. So in the handouts, you have both of the documents that I sent through email for your reference. So you should have a copy of this deck, and you should have a copy of the proposed rubric that's going to be the main issue on our agenda today. So our objectives for this second RPP review committee meeting is to review and obtain feedback on the scoring rubric, so we can begin our initial scoring process. And then I will review some procedures for obtaining applications and scoring of your applications for your feedback. So as I said, I sent you a copy of our proposed rubric for your consideration, thoughts, revisions. And it's probably about a 4 or 5 page document. It's aligned with the notice of invitation. And I went and took an initial crack of coming up with a process of how we would think about scoring and weighting certain elements of the application. So the first part of the screening of the application process would be an initial screening. So this is where the reviewer would check the following for the following components of the application. So the first piece would be organizational eligibility, which comes from the statute. So is the applicant a university, college, nonprofit organization, or a consortium that combines university, college, nonprofit organizations joined for the purposes of this partnership? That comes from the RPP statute. The second is timely submission. The 3 applications that you will have before you were submitted timely, so there's no action that you need. They were all submitted on time. Period of commitment. So the applicant demonstrates a commitment to enter the partnership for no less than 10 years. And then I'll also put background information that I thought shouldn't be scored. So an executive summary, stating a mission and history, and then just listing out the members of their consortium if they have a consortium. I didn't assign points to any of that because some applicants might be a part of a consortium, and the other information was just sort of exposition. So again, the rubric is aligned to the notice of invitation, and I thought about when I was thinking about the initial sort of proposal, I bucketed the notice of invitation into 4 components. So one is research expertise, which is worth 50 points. Data use and protection, which is worth 20 points. Financial management and budget, which is worth 15 points. And collaboration, which is worth 15 points. So I felt like those were the 4 general buckets that the elements of the NOI spoke to. And then there were subcomponents in each of those areas. So vision for the district RPP is 5 points. Vision for the district RPP. Did I mess that up? This doesn't work. Oh, no, I didn't mess that up. Okay. So vision for the district RPP, 5 points. Knowledge and expertise. So the subcomponents there are expertise in education research for urban school districts and states. Expertise in partnering with government. Plan to leverage best practices of RPPs and philosophy. Networks, expertise in community outreach. All of that would be worth 30 points. And each of those subcomponents would be worth 5, except for expertise. I weighted the expertise in education research by 2. So if you scored it, say a 4, they would get times 2 as 8 for that component. The next section, partnership personnel and collaboration. So their current personnel, 5 points. Personnel dedicated to the partnership, 5 points. And advisory committee collaboration is 5 points. The next section, data use and protection research methods. So there's 2 subsections here. expertise and security, so I weighted that by 2. Data management and security plan, I also weighted that by 2. So if you scored it a 3, you would multiply it by 2, it would be worth 6 points. They would have gotten 6 points. In research methods, so validity, data quality, and independence, so each of those subsections would be 5 points. And then financial management and proposed budget. There are subcomponents here in the NOI, but I thought it might make sense to just review the budget section in its entirety, score it, and then multiply it by 3, a factor of 3, for a total of 15 points. So in that research bucket, I think where I got off initially, knowledge and expertise is 30 points. Vision for the district RPP is 5 points. So that's 35. And the research methods section is the 15 to make the total 50 for research. So you would review each section according to a 0 to 5 scale. So 0 would mean the requirement was not met. 1, that the response was very poor or unclear. 2 points, poor or somewhat unclear. 3, fair response. 4, good response. And 5, excellent response. And then again, walking through the multiplier. So you would score them on a scale of 0 to 5, but then we would multiply it by the multiplier. So knowledge and expertise in education research for urban districts and states times 2. In data use and protection research methods, expertise and security times 2. Data management security plan also times 2. And then reviewing the entire financial management and proposed budget, you would score that on a scale of 0 to 5, but multiply it by 3. So that was fast, and you have the rubric in print. And okay. So for your feedback, I think to get our discussion started is, so values. So is the values prioritization correct? So do you feel like these buckets are the right buckets and that I've weighted them appropriately? And then we would move on to the sections and subsections. So are the subsections and sections appropriately valued? So I think I'll just open the floor for any feedback and comments on the rubric, or where things people like or things that people want, recommend some adjustment.
I think that
Go ahead.
the
Go ahead.
buckets that you created align well with the application. Well, they align perfectly with the application as far as I can tell. And we'll be judging the applications based on whether or not they meet the criteria set forth. So on that front, I'm perfectly supportive of what you've proposed. I welcome sort of a more lively discussion about whether or not whether the weighting is where we want it to be. From the outset, I agree with what you've proposed, Justin, but I'd love to hear from fellow panelists.
No, I had a very similar reaction. Like, I think the buckets make perfect sense. I would love to talk about the weighting as well.
Same.
Okay. So it looks like we're
one.
Oh, go ahead. Is that Akeem?
No, it's Sam. The one thing I just had a question about, I agree generally. Apologies if I'm missing this, which part, where is the collaboration bullet from slide 5 spelled out? Or what does it fit in? Is it across other ones? Or am I looking at an old deck?
No, you're not. So the collaboration points is the current personnel dedicated to the partnership, and advisory committee collaboration.
Oh, okay, got it. So
there's also a section about resource coordination, and in the document, I said no score, but you should review those things. because again, you might not want to give additional points to someone that's in a collaborative versus someone that wasn't. So I did not score that piece, but I was like, you probably should review it to make sure it makes sense, but not add any additional points there.
Got it. Thanks for clarifying that.
Mhm.
But yeah, I agree with others that it seems like the right breakdown, but I have a comment on one of the subsections, but it seems like we'll get to that later.
Are there other thoughts? Are we ready to sort of move to the subsection piece, since that seems to be the place where people have more questions? So I think the way that I'm thinking about it, I think my first question is that do you feel like the right subsections are in the right topic area? So you've got the four areas: research, collaboration, security, and budget. We could rearrange the subtopic areas into, if you don't think they fit correctly, or we can move forward to thinking about the points. So those are sort of the first two questions that pop in my head of maybe how to structure the conversation.
I think the buckets seemed like they were in the right place, and you know, checked all the boxes on categories. I don't feel super strongly about this. One thing that I notice is that under the research methods, that validity and data quality are very similar, which makes sense. So I could see, you know, condensing those if you want, but that's really just to, you know, like I said, I don't feel super strongly about that.
Are there other thoughts?
I think that, yeah, the parts that the subcomponents that I have, I'm trying to think through how we will actually score them on are in that same section of research methods. But the first, I think Aaron raises a good point of like, really like, what's the crossover between, or what do we mean by validity and data quality in this? Is it how they plan to check for data quality, or in that sense, do we believe that they're going to apply valid research methods? And then in that case, where is it their crossover between the knowledge and expertise kind of larger category? Like those are those two things, I think, as Aaron raised it, I was thinking through, might be worth discussing or thinking through how we would actually score something, an application on those. But the one that initially jumped out to me is how we would score independence, and whether or not that's just a component that I forget what the slide says, but like the initial bar that you have to pass to get to scoring, or if people can think of ways in which someone might score better or worse on independence, because if it's just assumed that they will get it or they will not, then I would say we should reallocate the points somewhere else, because they would need to be independent in order to qualify for this section. But I just, having not thought it through a ton, I would welcome others' thoughts on how we might be able to assign a rating out of 5 to independence.
Yeah, I also had a question about the independence section, and I don't know, that's a good point, Sam. I'm not sure if it's a points question or maybe it's more of a substantive question, because partnership work, the partner is independent. The work they produce is by definition not independent. It is in collaboration with stakeholders and adjusted and, you know, revised by design. So I was just, I'm not sure exactly. I agree that independence, the concept is important to apply to the partner, and I'm not sure if we have the right words here to get to that, because it refers to partnership work. and independence with regard to funders, public and government entities, which isn't how an RPP works.
There's a couple of other sort of keywords that jump out to me in the request for proposals under independence, and that's accountability and transparency. Maybe those words could be used as substitute for independence, which are already referred to in the request for proposals.
Yeah, that would be more, more scorable in my mind, and to Aaron's point, like kind of more consistent with what how an RPP operates as well. Like, might be worth considering swapping out either. I would certainly say I think we would want to score on, if possible, that what they've committed to in terms of transparency. And accountability as well. But if I had to preference one, it would be transparency.
Yeah, like most RPPs that I'm aware of maintain a right to publish clause in their MOAs. And that, I don't know, I feel like that's sort of is in the vein of accountability and transparency. While the work is done in collaboration with stakeholders intentionally, it could be at the end of the day that, and it happens, at the end of the day that there's disagreements on publishing. And that is why most RPPs say that we, as an independent research entity, we are your partner, but we reserve the right to publish. And there may be specifics under that, like, perhaps they have to take out the names of participating LEAs or the state or whatever, but that most of them reserve that right for that purpose. But I don't know if that's something that we would expect to see in an application.
Yeah.
How would we score that if we saw it too, right?
I don't know.
Yeah, that's the struggle I'm having is like, if it's not, I haven't read the RPP in a little while, or sorry, the request for proposals in a while. And like, in my mind, like, transparency is both the right to publish, but it's also transparency in terms of pre-registering analyses beforehand, because that also is the counterpoint to that right to publish, from the perspective of the data owners and the community and the government, is that you are reporting on the analyses that we intended you to do, and you are noting where you have used your discretion, as opposed to hunting for the statistic that is significant or something that proves a point in one way or another. So like, but I don't think they were asked to write about that in the proposal. So like, I don't know that we could score it. It's something we may want to think about the actual review board taking into account in their operations as this stands up, but maybe not in the scoring process.
Yeah, and a lot of this may come up in their experience working with, in collaboration with, government or other partners, which was another question I had. It's in the RPP best practices section, but that section I would like to see weighted. I would switch the education research and RPP experience weights to get at this type of information. It'd be to the extent that they have navigated these exact waters before and are not coming at it from a traditional research perspective, that would be good to value in this process.
So what I'm hearing there, Aaron, just to make sure, because I'm trying to keep the requests, all the requests square, is it sounds like your idea is to lower the expertise in education research for urban school districts and states from 10 to 5, then add the 5 points to the plan to leverage best practices.
Yeah, that given the wording that we have here, you know, it sounds weird to lower the importance of education research experience as it's written, but you could see writing this in a way that says, you know, expertise in collaborative education research in urban school districts and states. That would combine it, or I would say, yeah, to switch the values, because to the extent they are meeting these bullets that are written under the RPP best practices and philosophy, those would be extremely valuable to the district. And I mean, that's why this isn't just a research contract. We have a bazillion of those, and in fact, they have all applied. So, but so we want, you know, something that's different is a value add is RPP knowledge and experience. And at this point, RPPs have been around for so long. There's such a depth of knowledge there. There's you know, annual conferences and just for RPP work, and their folks are really honing their expertise there. So I'd like to see that valued accordingly.
So it sounds
What
like,
about,
can I just summarize what I've heard just to make sure that I've got, so it sounds like there's 3 ideas here. Is 1, that validity and data are redundant. So we could combine those points. You combine those sections, do a multiplier to make them worth 10. You could lower them, you could raise them, you could do whatever you want to. Then there's a second idea about that's more semantics, which is changing independence to accountability and transparency. But it sounds like there's no point value change there. And then there's another proposal to switch the values for expertise in research down 5 and increase best practices up 5.
Erin, just to respond to what you're suggesting, that maybe we could leave the expertise in education research at the 10 points, but collapse 2 of the other bullet points into 1 5-point, which would be, I would suggest maybe networks and expertise in coordinating and conducting community outreach, which, you know, there are obviously some differences there, but I think that they go along in the same vein. And so that could be an opportunity to use that 5 points from one of them to give a greater weighting to the RPP.
Yeah, I found myself thinking something similarly. Networks, I thought, I don't know if it must maintain in this bucket, but it also could align with something in the collaboration section. But found myself listening to Erin's suggestion and trying to well, what is more important, the experience in the RPP or the experience with all the other things we have listed there? And so I would fully support like making those equal.
Yeah, same.
Equal feels better.
Equal
So,
does feel better.
combine those together and make them 5 points together.
Yeah, find a way to steal 5 points somewhere and give it to RPP.
Okay.
And that expertise and the best practices are both worth 10. That's what we're saying, right? Just to reiterate.
Okay. So both of them will get a multiplier of times 2 and then combine that to 5. Are there any other items? And then what I will do is I'll go back to the slide where it's all listed out and update it, and then you can eyeball it just to confirm that I've got it right. Are there other thoughts? Jen or Akeem, I don't think we've heard from you at all.
I have a thought, I have a question, and this comes up when we do these sorts of things. I'm just curious if you have the same reaction. Some of those, I think, when you score and read, I think it will lend itself well to a 1 through 5 or 0 through 5 scoring. And other ones, I find that 5 seems rather wide. So the ones that are more like financial and some staffing, and I was like, is there a difference between, I'm sorry, if you go scroll up and see 4 and 5, and it's some of the, I'm not sure how consistent we're going to be across those. I don't know if that matters, but that was one reaction that I had, but I realized it doesn't work out well with assigning points and so forth, so that could be a challenge. Like vision, is there a 4 and 5 vision? Maybe. I haven't actually tried to do this yet, so that was just one reaction I had. With some of the sections seemed like it might be a little harder to be that nuanced. And is there some basis that we're going to come to an agreement ahead of time on how we're going to think about it when we score? And if others don't have that concern, then fine. But that's one thing that struck me.
No, that makes sense, Jen. I'm with you on that one. I was thinking about where we were before in terms of the 10 with the expertise or partnerships and network and whatnot. So I am glad Susanna came up with that proposal. I'm good with that one.
So it sounds like the question that Jen is posing that I think people might want to give feedback, because I'm not quite sure how to fix it, is are there some sections that should either be, they can be not scored, or they could be scored on some sort of like yes, no binary, which is like 0
Or
or
3.
1.
Yeah,
0,
like 0, like 1, 3, and 5. Like that was the thing that was sort of struck me. Again, I think many of them lend themselves to the wider range and more nuance, but like again, financial management. And maybe, again, I haven't tried to do it, so I don't know. Maybe it's totally fine. Like you either have robust procedures to do financial management, maybe they're seem fine, or they stink. Like that. So that's, again, I don't have an opinion, it's just something that struck me. I don't know if a solution is, again, we don't have to belabor this if no one else has this concern. For some of them, is it just you can only give, you know, the worst, middle, or highest? Like there's some sort of, I don't know if that'll have some kind of negative or skew things at all, but there's one way I was thinking of trying to solve for that.
Yeah, I don't think you're belaboring the point at all. I think it's an excellent point. Yeah, I could see that mattering with the financial management section, where I wouldn't assume to know everyone's background on this call, but I don't imagine we have any accountants who would be able to tell the difference between a good accounting practice and an excellent one.
I think data management and security like also lends itself to that, right? Like either it's acceptable or it's not acceptable in some of those cases.
Data management and what else, Rebecca?
The security, it's one section.
So are we saying make it even stronger of like there's no 3, 0, 5? Like there's some sections that should be 0 or 5. You either get it or you don't. Because Jen was saying 0, 3, 5, and then Rebecca, it sounded like you were being more, or maybe there was a comment about being a little bit more binary of like you either got it or you didn't.
When you say it out loud, it makes me like sort of I'm rethinking my position, because there could be an opportunity where I think that I understand what they're saying. Maybe they're a little not clear. Like I think I understand what they're saying, and if I do, it's acceptable. So like that would probably be a 3. So I would sort of support the 1, 3, 5 scoring of things like that.
1, 3, 5 or 0, 3, 5?
Sorry, 0, 3, 5.
Okay. So those sections that I've heard: financial management, data management, security, and vision.
The vision one, I just literally tried to think of like, how would I, and I was like, I don't know.
I mean, like with vision, I mean, I know, I think it's going to be interesting to see where you all start and how you read them. Like I've not read them from cover to cover, but like it's I mean, when I have to do things like this, I sort of try to read through and then go back and do individual sections so I can like see. So the test for me on vision would be like, yeah, you've got this vision, but did it sort of follow the thing? Was it good? Was it the right vision? And is it supported with the things? You didn't tell me you were going to do this great research, but then you didn't have any experience in doing it, right? So that might be what I was thinking around there.
Can I ask a dumb question on the NOI, which I have not read recently? Did it apply or tell people that that certain sections were weighted differently than others, or people these are we get to make them completely independent of that process?
It did not specify how we were scoring them. And you get to make that decision.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
To go back to Rebecca's point about using the 035 method for data security, I was wondering if there might be an opportunity to have like a speaker come in to one of our meetings to talk to us about like what we should be looking for data security. So we all have that sort of a base of knowledge to use. Personally, I don't know that much about data security standards, so maybe that's just a selfish request. But yes, perhaps if I like had a deeper expertise in this or more knowledge, I'd think, oh, there could be a nuance between like a 3 and a 4 that I'd want to see reflected in the rubric.
Sam raised that at the last meeting. I've not just someone to sort of come in. He mentioned somebody, maybe Octo. That's something that we can do. I think it's just sort of the timing of it and like figuring out who the person is. But yes, it's on my list of things.
Yeah, and I would just picking up on that, what Rebecca's comment made me think of is that from my perspective, there probably are degrees of data security, and things are more labor intensive and harder to do, especially in a remote environment and across a bunch of partners, but would be better data security practices. So there, in my mind, there could be differentiation of it, having not seen what the plans actually look like yet, but there could be degrees of it. But it also made me think that we might also want to consider, like, if it's not sufficient, that it's a disqualifying factor or a factor that they need to address before like being awarded the before being awarded or entering into like the negotiations for the contract. Because like if it's only 5 points and it's completely insufficient, then I don't think we would want to move forward with it. But we might want to say, like, we want to select you, but you have to, in the process of negotiating the agreement, like you need to upgrade your data standards to something, whatever that would be. But I don't know how that plays out in the process, because like I wouldn't want, I couldn't give it to someone and say this is okay if their data security was insufficient. But they could have been great on everything else. That would be a weird situation.
And I assume we also wouldn't give them an MOA if their data security was insufficient.
Yeah, so it might be something to play out then, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what it says. Things are changing so rapidly, and like to the extent they're talking about things, you know, that are all cloud-based, which would make sense if they are. That's where my expertise tends to diminish. Like we had really strong standards when I worked at Ed, for example, but they were so hardware focused and so strong that you know, people with restricted use data licenses routinely broke those standards because they were so strong. And so there's like some fine balance of yeah, I mean, it required you to have like your laptop chained to a desk in a locked room, and anyway, it's so point being, like, things can sound super secure, but if they're not functional too, then that doesn't work either. But and a lot of the functionality has been replaced with layers of cloud-based security, which again, I don't know all of the details there. Maybe I don't know how much we have to sort out before seeing the applications, or how much would be sorted out on the back end, before negotiating an MOA. But maybe then to your point, Rebecca, it is like a 0, 3, or 5 issue. Like you have something we can work with. You're not, crazy out on a limb, or you don't.
Yeah, I think I like Sam's sort of iteration on what I was saying too. I do agree. Like, I think there's various levels of this that we could score, but I also feel like there's a level at which you would be disqualified. Like, we have a minimum sort of threshold of what we would allow. And I like this idea of, you may be at a 3, we get it, like we see you're thinking about it, but like in order to be awarded, you must get yourself up to at least these standards. I could totally get behind that.
Yeah, and just to add, I think I would agree with it being like a 3 category. If it's 0, 3, 5, I think that makes sense. I don't think it needs to. I don't think I would not be able to differentiate it between a 2 and a 3 point for it. But like having a little bit of a scale, I think would make sense, and then something that we would make conditional if we didn't see that it was sufficient.
Yeah, and I would not know how to rate that your laptop must be chained to a desk in an office. For Aaron's earlier point.
They still send contractors out to go check those chains all the time. It's quite a fun job. Or I imagine. I have not done that.
Are there other thoughts? I've got it, like, if you want to see what your revised rubric looks like right now, I can show you that. I made those updates in the slides. So will that be helpful?
I think so. And going back to the getting 10 points for leveraging the best practices, the RPP and the philosophy. I know that vision is its own bucket, and it's been a while since I looked at it as well. Do we have the option to maybe merge that in with the philosophy and the best practices, and with this group? If we can do that, what are this group's thoughts about doing that to get the extra 5 points for that section?
I think that's a great idea.
That makes sense.
Standard vision by itself, I feel like I was getting a little stuck on, and I realized that was the first thing I looked at, but
So can you say that again? So you're saying add vision for the district RPP to the plan to leverage best practices, and then make that worth a weight of 3? Was that what you were saying?
Each are worth 5, right? Each are worth 5 points right now. So what would that add? I don't know what it would look like to add up to the total 10.
So, I mean, I can show you what that looks like. But based on what you told
Thank you.
me.
I have like several screens open.
So, but then this would be by 3, and then this would be gone. Oops, no. So you would be reading these 3 sections holistically, evaluating them on a scale of 0 to 5 now, and then weighting them times 3. So if you said they were worth 4, they'd be worth 12.
Yep,
And
perfect.
then this section here would be worth 35, I think. Yes, that's how that would look.
That looks good. Good idea. Can if no one has any more questions on that first section, I have a question on the next section, but I won't jump until if people are still thinking through that one.
Yes, if I could just make one more point about the data security conversation. Maybe in addition to having an initial screening, we could have like minimum standards that it's not like, did you fill out this application correctly, but like, do you have a basic data security policy in place or something that would mean that if someone didn't have any data, such a policy, that they couldn't still win the contract without us at least going back to them, or, and maybe there's other things that we'd want to see at least some basic standard, that you couldn't be like super high in one area and not have anything in another section, in another bucket, if that makes sense. Like it's not just about getting a really high score on one section, but doing well across all of them.
So I can make a comment to that, right? Is that the review committee has not made a decision yet regarding how to use scores, right? Because we've not reviewed anything yet. So you could say, all right, based on the scores, we're going to ask for additional information or interview somebody, and then what the question that you raised could be a part of that. Or there's a state of the world where you could say one of them, we all agree that one of them is light years ahead, and we're ready to just proceed based on this information. Both of those could be plausible, and I don't know if we're I don't think we're at a place of making that decision, but just like you have the space to ask for additional information if you wanted to, or we thought about that in the last session.
I'm comfortable with Justin's suggestion. Suzanne, I don't know if that's getting to your point, but I think your greater point, which Sam and then Rebecca had brought up, is that we're not going to award to someone who's got serious lacking sections, particularly when it comes to data security. So I'm comfortable personally with if there is a zero, if that person does have, if that one applicant has a very low score, but is highly scored in other ways, that we would follow up to confirm that they can address those concerns before moving forward, whether that be awarding or considering, a couple different options.
Yeah,
I'm comfortable with Justin.
Thanks. So am I. I'm comfortable with what you outlined, Jen, and as Justin recommended. Thanks.
I noticed that data management and security is wrapped up in one and at times two. What are the thoughts about breaking them out? Because I feel like, data management and data security are two different things. And I wonder if it's worth not bulleting them out separately.
Sorry, you mean the bullets under the data management and security?
Data management and security plan, right? It's not a hill I'm willing to die on, but it did jump out to me when I looked at it.
And would you still score those on the 0, 3, 5 scale? Both of those items?
That's a good question. I'm considering the data management piece.
So can I give you a little bit more context here? So I think what might make this complicated is data management and security was a required section of the NOI together. So piecing out the components of the application that correspond to one part or the other might not be something that.
Okay, fair enough. I wondered if that might not be it.
Like those things are all under one heading in NOI.
Okay.
Yeah, right.
Am I right, Nagesh?
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now.
Giving 20 points to the data use and protection research methods section means that we give the same weight to an application that was excellent on having great expertise in education research as another application that had really excellent security. And I don't know in this, both things are really important, but the knowledge is, I think, more important than you can sort of bring in better data security methods, but if you don't have a base of knowledge in education, then this is probably not the right plan contract for you. Granted, the knowledge and expertise section overall is a higher weight. Sorry, I'm just thinking out loud here.
No, I mean, I was actually thinking the opposite. I'm like, what if they're really great, but they're totally irresponsible with data, right? Like the opposite is true. But like to your point too, it feels even more like that section should really be a disqualifying event, that they would be required to provide additional information if we found that it was lacking. But I do take your point that we could have someone who is like super secure, but has no expertise in other places, but they have a really great personnel, right? And we could find ourselves in a weird situation.
I
Is
tend to
there,
agree.
yeah, I was wondering, and maybe we don't need to get there at all, but there are ways that you can find a proposal to be non-responsive to the RFP, if it really doesn't meet basic categories. Although we're talking about, not meeting one category, not all of them. But yeah, if they have all of one and none of another, that I'm assuming there would be some fallout in other places too, but that would certainly be a red flag. Or I guess these are all the applications that OSSI received, correct, in total? You didn't already find some non-responsive?
No, we did not do an initial screen.
Just checking. I realized as I said that.
These were the three that were submitted, and these are the three you're gonna get. I think though too, I think it was on the comment about the knowledge and expertise section, the expertise and research. So remember, like the way that I thought about it is like each of these individual subsection gives a comprehensive picture of knowledge and expertise, right? Is like you could be the best researcher but you are the best researcher sort of in isolation of working with government and in isolation of having an RPP, right? Is like you can be like an in-house academic, but not be working with anybody, and like looking at all of those pieces comprehensively, those elements that make up the whole 35 points, I thought summatively evaluated knowledge and expertise. If that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think our minds just naturally look for outliers, right? Like we probably won't encounter the situation that we are planning for, but it's baked into us to always look for those things.
And again, it's a consensus driven process, right? It's like you can this is just to help you sort of structure your review when you're thinking and sort of get your initial alignment and figure out where you want to go from there.
What about adding in a weight, which was like overall excellence or something like that, or overall quality? That would, I mean, it would add a layer of subjectivity to it, and could be a little bit of a gray area, but could address our concerns of if there's a proposal that is very, very weak on one area that we wouldn't want to give the award to.
Susanna, the way I feel like I have dealt with that in the past, I know what you're talking about, is that I read an application, however many times I read it, I score it. I have a gut on what I think, right, is like the end. And then when you total it up, you see like, oh, that is or isn't what I thought of my own sort of summative reaction. And then it forces you to go back and decide, did I give the right points? So that would be my suggestion of actually how to, now that's for each individual reviewer, that is not as the group, but I agree with you that that is often what happens, and I think it should, because it helps you then realize, are you putting the right priorities on the right things and scoring it correctly? That's, I don't know if that's a fair way of doing it, but I think that's how I've dealt with it personally.
Yeah, I think, Yeah, I think that makes sense. Thank you for suggesting that.
Was that a recommendation for me to change something?
Nope.
No,
Thanks.
just us to change our thought process.
Just our own internal fidelity.
Is there an opportunity, like, I'm just thinking, I wonder if a certain number of zeros wouldn't disqualify someone, right? So it's like, if you have more than 2 zeros for a section, I'm just throwing out random ideas, but I wonder if that's not something that could help us as well, because what we wouldn't want to Susanna's earlier point is someone scoring really high in some things and actually not responding at all to certain pieces, being in a situation where they have more points than someone who did pretty darn good across the board.
Or is there a minimum threshold at which an application on as a whole should meet? Like, do you need to meet at least like 50 points? You know, but I think Rebecca, you're hitting that other part. There could be applications that just, you know, in some categories are just, they might be 0. I mean, it's possible. I mean, again, I don't, you know, I don't necessarily see that, but it's entirely possible.
I think your initial screen may handle that issue. So remember, you have this period of commitment test. You have whether the organization is eligible on its face. And then, well, they're all timely submitted.
That makes sense, Justin.
All right, so are there any other comments? It's about 1:30.
I have one on the partnership, personnel, and collaboration section.
Yes.
I understand your reasoning for not including a score on the consortium aspects. But nonetheless, we have 2 consortia type, I don't know their structures, but type of applicants. And wonder if we can put that category and merge it with current personnel so that if they do have a consortia, they have to be graded on it. I can't imagine for the 2 applicants that do, not considering how they've decided to organize themselves for an RPP. But then we could still, you know, if they're not a consortia, that we would look at their the organization they have for their current personnel.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that having a consortium could arguably be something that we score on, because in the NOI, under the scope and responsibilities of the partnership, one of the bullet points laid out is that you need to solicit research partners to conduct rigorous and impactful quantitative or qualitative research using industry recognized methodologies. So by having coming in to the application process with a consortium could demonstrate your ability to solicit research partners. But again, that might be covered already under the knowledge and expertise section that has the expertise in coordinating.
There's so many different ways that RPPs organize themselves now, and I think it's like with our current applicants, I don't yet know if these are institutional partners or individual people with institutional affiliations. And if it is the former or the latter, I would expect them to speak to a governance model that accounts for whatever the plan is for, I mean, you know, it impacts everything. It impacts data security that we've been talking about a lot, and independence and how they work with the advisory committee. the whole shebang would I think we would see reflected with or we would see changes based on a different governance structure. There's RPPs that are more like Tinder for research, right? That like you have a practitioner or policymaker that's looking for a certain thing and you get a match. Whereas there's others that have like really core principles and institutional partners that sign on to those principles. And I'm not saying one is better than the other, but it's a hefty like substantive topic area in the field of RPPs that I would expect them to have fleshed out in the application.
That all makes sense to me. The second bullet here where it says personnel dedicated to the partnership, and I apologize, does the consortium fall into that category rather than current personnel? I don't remember the distinctions, or are they just combined and weighted more? Because we're looking at both. I'm not sure, because I'm not sure how it's breaking out, but I think to your point, Erin, I also am going to want to understand that because it's going to be critical to how they're going to operate. So yes. I think I'm agnostic on what category it goes into, but
they
so
are
mush those all three. Sorry, Nagesh, what did you say?
In the NOI, they are separate. The consortium, the networks that you're harnessing versus the current personnel, they are separated out. And there were submission requirements for each one.
Maybe consortium is considered in one or, go ahead, Erin.
Sorry, Jen.
Go ahead.
How exactly do they have current dedicated personnel for a non-existent thing? What do we expect that to look like? Those are people that are presumably doing something else right now. They're not just hanging out waiting. So what does that mean?
Yeah, I mean, what they were supposed to submit is there's the current staffing of the entity itself, and then there's a proposal in there of how personnel would be dedicated to the partnership, so a staffing plan.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right, there's one entity, there's one main applicant, and then there's partnerships that are associated with them, right? So the first bullet is about the applicant, who is presumably an entity. And then after that, it is their partners that they have, or a consortium, right, whatever language. So it seems like the consortium goes in the second bullet. Although maybe to your point, Erin, the governance still is in the first. I don't know, I'm agnostic to where it goes, but maybe to your point, it could be in one or the other or both that we have to consider it, right? Because that's critical to at least apparently 2 of the 3 applications.
Is it too vague to squish all 3 together, like current and future personnel and consortium coordination for 10 points? Or is that too mushy? Maybe that's too hard, would be too hard to score.
I think I like them separate personally, again, without having seen it, but it feels like to me, I'd like to know how they're going to staff it, the full-time aspect from the applicant, the key applicant, and then how they're managing their partnership. That's my.
I mean, you could put consortium governance, if that makes it a little bit, rather than just consortium, so that at least it provides a metric for how that consortium will be governed by the lead entity that applied.
Yeah, which is actually, I sort of abbreviated that. I think it's actually consortium coordination. And so it's getting at the idea of how you're managing your part. Like if you have partners, what are the roles of partners and how are you governing them? If you have agreements and commitments with them. So it is to this element of capacity building. And I think it could fit anywhere you want to put it.
In terms of the current personnel again, I'm not sure how I would score this on a 0 to 5 scale. Like what's the difference between a good current personnel and an excellent current personnel? I'd suggest maybe this is something that we'd also put on a 0 to 0.35 scale.
I felt that way as well. That was one that I had in my head, thought about asterisks. I think once we throw in the coordination, then I don't quite know how that works, but I had that original reaction too. I'm not sure I can make that differentiation. I don't know though now that we have the coordination in there or not, but I also felt that way originally when I was
Yeah. From reading the scoring rubric, I think I agree, because it tends like because if it's about the org chart and the number of full-time equivalents, it's like you're almost like saying, how big is this organization already, or at least the education research component of it, which may be a value, like a good thing, in that they're not just going to be proposing to, in the dedicated to the partnership portion, basically saying, if you give this to us, we are going to, you know, hire a ton of people to do this, but we don't have many right now. But as it's written in the rubric, it feels like something that's just 0.35, like, because it seemed more like a organizational size or dedication is what at least the rubric sounds like we're scoring.
Someone just put the first bullet there. The current personnel is what you were.
Yeah, so I was in the Word doc, just looking at it, describe the entity's current staffing level, provide the entity's current org chart, and counts of FTE positions devoted to conducting qualitative or quantitative research and education. I mean, I don't know if I could look at the org chart and say that's good or bad, or it's probably just going to look like most org charts, and it's probably going to not really reflect the organization or how things run. So really, like, more of it is like, how many people do you have devoted to quantitative and qualitative education research right now, is how I read that criterion. I guess a long way of saying I would support making it a 0.35 if we were doing that.
I mean, I'm like, say this out loud, but I don't want to say I'm less concerned. I don't have zero concern, but I'm less concerned about the number than I am about how they plan to use the personnel, right? Because at some point, like, it may be too many because their plan doesn't account for how many people they have involved. So I feel like I'm going to be looking at the first and second bullet like together.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too. I feel like it's since it's all in the future and not yet existent, and presumably they'll be responding. Hopefully, they would be responding to the district's needs. I don't know how. Their current staffing level, like, the quantity is less important than how they can use the personnel that they have or plan to partner with to be responsive to district needs.
So based on what I'm hearing, still worth 15, but current gets you nothing. But the real question is, do you have the, what are you going to do? How are you going to set this up to do what we want you to do, which is to fulfill the mission in the statute, which is, hey, I want you to do this vision of providing independent research. You're going to have to work with this advisory committee. You're going to have to put together a research agenda, and you're going to get data from different places. I'm oversimplifying, but generally, you're going to get data from the government. You're going to have to protect it, and you're going to publish things with the data and doing different processes, research processes and methods. That's the general task that we have. And you're also going to have to translate, like, there's a sharing back to the public component that's really important too, is like, how do you make the how do you make the research translatable to the public and the different stakeholders that the research is saying to?
I would say you maybe even can collapse the two into 10 points.
Before you collapse, can I make another suggestion?
Steal the 5 points for consortium.
Well, I think here's something else. This is the small wrinkle that I want to throw out there, that we have essentially partnership, personnel, and collaboration as the third most important category, right? So it goes expertise and knowledge, data use, and then partnership and collaboration, then research methods and financial management. And I'm just wondering, like, is it the third? Is it similar to data security? I mean, if this is to Erin's point, we're not awarding a contract to an entity to then go forth and do a research project, right? This is sort of the crux of it, is this collaboration and personnel. It feels a little low to me, 15, now that I'm looking at it. So I think my suggestion, which obviously we can overrule it, is to make it 20 actually. And then, so then don't take away my other category, right, the other category, because then you can make that 5. So just a thought throwing out there.
I agree with that. That this is the bread and butter of, and probably the part that they struggled with the most in the application. They put the most, had to put the most thought into, and talking to all these people and how they were going to work together. That's presumably the part that has never occurred before until these applications.
Yeah, I also agree that's an excellent point that I'd be supportive of. But Jen, could you just clarify, I think I missed it, where you would take the 5 from to get bump partnership up to 20?
That's a good point. I think I would take it from the knowledge and expertise. So I think we took 5 from vision and put it in there. So I would essentially take those 5 points away. And I don't know what that does to our bullets. I didn't get that far.
I wonder if, so I'm looking at the personnel dedicated to partnership under this. It doesn't really talk, I mean, it talks a little bit about like who's going to be responsible and how you're going to manage those people. But if you don't have a consortium, like how are you going to coordinate across those people? And so I wonder if we could not collapse current personnel and personnel dedicated to the partnership so that whatever's current personnel is actually just a bullet under here. That's worth 10 points. And the other 5 points is consortium / personnel coordination, so that we actually do score that to bump it up to 20.
So Jim, when you were talking, I actually heard a different, you say a different.
She wants to make this worth 20, but I was like wondering how. Sorry, Justin.
But the taking away piece, I heard it looked something like this, which was change this, since like you all earlier were saying, hey, I can't really differentiate. We're going to do 035 for financial management anyway. You do 2 here and you bring this back up to 20.
Oh, I thought you were taking it from the top one, but I do like this better, I think.
I would suggest that, but I agree. Maybe that's a better place to get it still.
I think the support you gave led me to this.
As I've been thinking it through and looking through a little bit more, I actually think that I now wouldn't take it from the financial management part of it, because I actually think there's a supporting function here that we might be talking about in the proposed partnership. In that, like, if in the financial management and proposed budget, there's the proposed potential funding sources and institutional support, like really the applicant's either going to ask us for a lot more money, or they are going to have to identify current resources or grant or external resources in order to put either existing people into this that now have a different responsibility, or they're going to get resources to hire new people into it. And so I feel like having that component of how much do we think they are going to be able to either bring to this or add to it, like, I think is an important thing that, like, because how are they going to do all of the things if, for example, they don't have a lot of ways of being able to add more staff or more resources to it. So I feel like that portion of the financial management and budget, like, actually supports the proposed, the personnel dedicated to the partnership in some way, and I might take the 5 out of data use and security, since we talked about being able to potentially like disqualify them for disqualifying factors, or make sure they're of data security, or make sure that they upgrade as part of the MOA. But that was just something that I was thinking through as we were talking through it. It's like the plan matters, but we also need to see that they're going to be able to identify current or future resources to staff this.
Yeah, and I'm looking back at the fiscal impact statement for the legislation, and the maximum grant award was one time of $500,000. So that was what was authorized by the legislation. Whether or not the district government decides to provide more money to this, but I mean, we could always spend more money on it, but showing that, to Sam's point, showing that they can stand up on their own is going to be critical for this to be able to run for 10 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, I don't know, it makes me uncomfortable to weight heavily their connections to current funders, which is what we would be in effect be doing. So I would push back on that. This project, this gets to like why it is so different than all of the RFP and proposal reviews we've probably all done in the past, where there's a certain pot of money and we're trying to allocate it to someone. And in this case, there's no money. And we're judging on the merits of their application. And I just, if one of the merits of their application is how much promised money they have, I don't know, it gets a little weird to me. I think that I don't know, I can't articulate the ethics concerns yet, but it makes me feel certainly squeamish about what we are valuing in the applications. We have a section on networks, their prior experience and expertise. We would be expecting, I think, that any of these, anybody who makes it through this process, or that we would award a partnership to, for lack of a better word, would be ready to hit the ground running and applying for grants. There are tons, that's an overstatement. There are multiple Department of Ed grants that RPPs are eligible for. There used to be a dedicated stream that's gone, but there are other, plenty of others. And presumably, like if there are funders that are currently interested in funding in district-based research to benefit the district, I would hope they would be interested in funding whoever wins this application. Not like that, we're not judging based on who is coziest with, big name funder in education. That I think is a problem.
I think that's a great point, Erin, and perhaps this question of sustainability is already addressed in the initial screening of, are they able to make a 10-year commitment?
Yeah, I mean, that is kind of like a ballsy ask on behalf of the district, to be quite frank.
Maybe 10 years for 500,000. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's the concern though. Like for me, and I totally agree that we don't want to privilege like the already privileged organizations that have the connections, but like we also like you if someone is going to be able to do this, like it probably it would be hard for a small institution to do this, I think, like whether or not they're connected or not, because they would, I think, need to be able to reappropriate staff for it. And then the challenge that I would see outside of like specific RPP grants is that then they need to be beholden to the purpose of the grant that they're applying for, and not to what the advisory committee has established as the research agenda. And like, that's always been a lot of our struggle with very specific grants is, in speaking from our work, is like, we then need to try and find a project to fit the grant as opposed to the one that fits the priorities of the district. And that's the challenge I foresee with that kind of a setup. But I totally get the squeamishness about like the connected view of it. But I also think there needs to be they need to have current or a sound plan of sustainability, because it's a pretty we're asking a lot of them.
Yeah, and I know this was a focus of when council and DME and maybe and OSSI, so you guys can speak better to this than to me, but it was a big focus when they went on the trip to Chicago, and to ask, how do you float this? Like, how does this work? And of course, the University of Chicago was like, well, there are staff. There's huge institutional support, but that's a very well established RPP, and maybe that wasn't too helpful of information for getting ours off the ground. However, there are multiple, I would say, avenues for figuring this out. There are teeny tiny RPPs starting in cities. There are some, starting like across multiple cities to help leverage themselves. It's like it is a consistent theme. I've been to the past two RPP and NERP annual conferences, and it's been a consistent theme there. Like there is a dedicated body of work and like figuring out how to get yourself off the ground in multiple more ways than just funding, right? So yeah, but that said, like they all had to speak in their application to their budget and institutional support. I wouldn't presume that that we're looking for the most well connected to funders who also have frequently in my own work have asks for researchers. So I don't find those to be that different than grants.
Well, I will say this. I encourage the review panel to like, you're having a very robust conversation on what is now a hypothetical, because none of us know what we're going to see. And I think the point here of this exercise is to think about, do you have a process that helps you figure out who's sufficient and who's not, and where and to guide your thinking next, right? And it seems like this question about sustainability is going to be one that I think is going to be robust, but I think I don't know if that's going to be resolved right here in this particular moment. I think it's going to be resolved once you sort of see where you land on sort of assessing what's before you, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
And one example, I think, is like what you do, Sam. Like some of the RPPs got started, these small ones got started by having SEA staff, fully funded SEA staff move to the small RPP, and that just solved that problem, at least in short term. Anyway, so there are. I have a substantive question that does need more than 5 minutes. What would be the best way to ask it? I don't want to. I want to be respectful of everyone's time.
Yeah. So to be very transparent, to keep us on track to get you applications next week to start your review process and give you 3 weeks until the beginning of November to review. I did not foresee doing another meeting on the rubric, and we're about at 2 o'clock. So we could table it, and so your options are we could table it and have another meeting on the rubric, or we could spend a little extra time trying to finalize the rubric so we can try to move closer to the review process. I think the question before you right now is you still have an unresolved issue of how you're going to structure the partnership personnel and collaboration section. And if you're going to add an additional 5 points, where are you going to take it from? And it sounds like you have two options before you. You have an option to take the 5 from financial management and proposed budget, which was the debate we just had, and then the conversation we just had. And then you could also take it from the data use and protection research methods. We've heard some interest in that, and lower that to 15. So we could. I think the first question is there still appetite to raise the partnership personnel and collaboration section by 5 points?
I would say yes.
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 Yeah, I'm for that.
It sounds like everybody is for that. Okay. So we'll have to come back and think about how we're going to do the inside of that. So I think you need to decide, and you could go, you could have a vote on this, and remember based on our conversations last time, our procedure around voting was you had to get the majority, you had to get the threshold that was prescribed with the legislation, right? So 2 on the executive side and 2 on the council side. So you could raise that question for a vote and vote, or if that's what you want to do.
Yeah, can we see where we are now and do that?
Sure. So what I will do is, so I'm not going to do it as like separate issues. So, I mean, you've got option A, which is data, you take from data use, option B, which is take from financial management. And then we could go through the 6 and see if we have 2-2 split between the executive and council.
Don't we have an option C?
Is there an option C?
In my head, there's an option C.
Okay.
Take it
which
from
is
35.
Take it from 35 and remove the vision for district RPP, plan to leverage best practices and philosophy to 2 times 2 instead of times 3.
Okay.
I think that, right, that's so that to me, those are our 3 options as I see it.
Okay.
That checks out for everybody else as options.
All right.
I thought we had used the points from the vision or spent them already on bumping up the RPP expertise.
We
Or
did.
have you taken them
Yeah.
somewhere else?
No, we did.
Yeah.
We went from 30 to 35. So what's 1, 2, 3, the third bullet.
We took them from vision, which was standalone, and we added it to, yeah.
And then raise that vision section to a factor of 3 and increase the non-expertise to 35 is what you did earlier. So now the third option is to take the 5 points from that section that you previously allocated, give it to partnership personnel and collaboration. So do you want me to write down what the options are for you with that, or is everybody square on what the options are? Here, let's just, for the good of the order.
Clarifying question though, did we feel that the sustainability question could be answered in that sort of pre-scoring review? So that people felt more comfortable taking it from financial, was my question, clarifying question.
Say that again, Rebecca.
So I think, I don't know if Aaron brought it up, but had Sam raised the concern about sustainability. I think there was a potential solution raised that there's our pre-scoring review says that they must meet the sustainability requirements and that they have to be able to do this for 10 years and show that they can. Is that, is them being on the hook to show that enough, like when we have enough confidence in that piece to say that let's just take the 5 from financial right now and be done with it? Because I think that was the main concern of why Sam didn't want to take the 5 from financial to begin with, because sustainability is important. But that seems to be a requirement to even be scored.
I would support that, but it was my suggestion to begin with, so.
Yeah.
I'd support that we're in a situation, if we did feel like we're in a situation where plan, but we don't see how we can have confidence to be sustained over 10 years, we could have a debate about that, and because that I think amidst the back and forth, I think that is a bit. So I would support that if we like taking it from financial, if we feel like we can have that discussion at the end about whether we really think that it's sustainable after review.
I think that would get us to like the 100 points in total, like right now. That's why I took the extra minute to share.
Yeah, that's.
I'm still not 100% clear on what, so financial management, take it from financial management, but assess how?
Through the initial screening that you established of needing to meet the criteria of being able to be sustainable for 10 years. So the issue that Sam raised would still be addressed, but it would be addressed through the initial screening than necessarily the scoring.
Yeah, you might want to also think about the initial screening as like the threshold questions, right? Like these are the bare minimums that they'd have to meet for even consideration by the panel.
I feel like the conversation around the financial piece was robust. I would be concerned about like a disqualification of an applicant through the initial screen.
I think the only way it could be a screen is if they don't say that this is a 10-year and they're going to figure it out. I mean, to me, that would be the only thing that I would be like, they just ignore it altogether. Like that would be my only, right? Because I think to Aaron's point, everyone else's, this is a big ask to ask of anyone for 10 years out of figuring out financial sustainability, but they get that they need to figure it out. But I think this is a hard one. I appreciate, Rebecca, you trying to figure out a way to address it, but and like keep us moving.
I gave it a shot, but I agree.
Okay, so we're not going to go that approach. All right. So it looks like there's 3 options before you. There's option A, which is take from data use. There's option B, which is take from financial management. There's option C, knowledge and expertise. So I think just procedurally, it's like, we'll see where we are, and if you have the 2-2 split, and then would you want to eliminate the lowest vote getter and then do another round of voting because you have 3 options? It could occur.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Unless you're going to vote against your proposal.
That's great, Justin. Yeah, that's great.
Okay. All right. So we will start.
And I don't know how, I don't have like super strong feelings on this particular vote. But I will vote. I won't be weird, but yeah, I want to be helpful. Moving us.
Let's see where people are.
Okay.
And then you can think of it. You can think of it that way, because it does seem like there are some stronger positions on this particular matter, based on the conversation we just had.
Okay.
Akeem and Aaron.
Justin, I wrote it all out. You can just do the tally. I have it.
Okay. So we can start with, I'll just go from council side to executive side, one, like, so Akeem, A, B, or C?
B.
B. Jen?
C.
Aaron?
C.
Sam?
A, I'm sorry.
Susanna?
I think you're muted, Susanna.
Hear you.
Susanna.
Okay, sorry, I'll go with
You're
B.
gonna abstain.
And then Rebecca.
B.
All right. So it looks like the lowest vote getter was A. B, A got 1 vote. B got 3 votes. And C got 2 votes, but none of them got to 4, and so you didn't get a majority on any of them. So do we want to discuss, or do you want to vote on between B and C?
I have a question. Would the vote to take it from C mean that we have to go back to this mismatch between the two we felt very strongly had to be the same amount of points? Or was it addressed from a third, like from somewhere else? Because that's what's holding me back from voting for C, is that I felt strongly about balancing the RPP expertise with expertise in general.
So I think when we say take away, take away from knowledge and expertise, we would lower this multiplier here to 2, and then that would be the 30 points. And then you would just simply add it to the 5 to partnership, personnel, and collaboration. So those would be on par. So in knowledge and expertise, the research and the vision would now be comparable. So you could go and reevaluate that.
So we don't lose the comparability that we established in the beginning of the meeting. We just reduce them both by the same amount. From a 3 to a 2, that would get us, I think, where we need it, right?
Yeah, I mean, there was debate about weighting the vision, plan, and philosophy section higher than the research section earlier. So if you took the 5 from the way that I described, lowering the multiplier of 3 to 2, you've now made those balance with each other.
Okay. I would revise my vote to C then with that. So I don't know if that makes a difference.
So let me,
We can do it again.
you want to just start all over again with going between B and C? Are there any other
Sure.
questions?
All right,
Yeah.
can you clarify? I missed adjusting. So we would have, if we're going back to our initial scoring rubric, like the document you sent out, the expertise in education is 10. The expertise in partnering with government is 5. The RPP is 10. The networks is 5. The coordinating is still 5. And it's a shifting of the vision for the district from into that bucket.
So I think you got that right. So remember, you've moved coordination into partnership and personnel, and you're trying to figure out if you're going to raise that more. You've still not figured out how you're going to raise it more in partnership and personnel. But for knowledge and expertise, there would be expertise in education research and your vision, plan to leverage best practices and philosophy. Those 2 subsections would be equally weighted.
Okay, then I think I'm with Rebecca that I'm comfortable switching my vote to C.
Okay, let's just call the roll and go through it.
Okay,
and then
sorry.
We'll go. Are there any other questions? All right. Okay, so the second vote is on between B and C. So B, financial management, and C, knowledge and expertise. So Akeem, B or C?
I'm going to stick with B.
Okay. Jen,
C.
say that again.
C.
B as in
Option
cat.
C.
Okay, Aaron.
C.
You're C as in cat.
It is hard to hear. It's funny. It's true. It's.
I thought you said D, Jen.
Yeah, I
You
did
said
too.
C too.
I thought you said D.
That's what I did. So I'm going to C.
Okay, so Aaron, you said C as in cat.
C as in cat.
Okay, great. Sam,
He as in boy.
B as in boy. Thank you. Susanna.
C is in cat.
Okay, and Rebecca.
D as in cat.
Okay. So it looks like C has 4 votes, B has 2 votes, and C is equally divided between the executive and the council. So it looks like we're going to go with C, which would make this look like this. And this would be 50, 17. Yep, okay. Now you need to going back into the partnership and personnel and collaboration. How are you going to allocate those 20 points through those subsections?
We moved the consortium coordination and personnel is now one, and personnel dedicated to the partnership is now one section, right?
That's correct, yes.
Okay.
So the question here is like, do you want to say that those two it sounds like current personnel was, you previously, current personnel, you were leaning towards 0 for that because you thought that their future capacity was more important than their current capacity, or their capacity to do what we want them to do when we award them. So you could keep that and go 0 to 2. You could go 5 to 5. You could do anything really.
I thought we were looking not to give current personnel a 0, but collapsing the current personnel and the current personnel dedicated to the partnership into one scoring.
Okay. So,
Rebecca, you're on mute.
That was my understanding as well. And then finding a way to add like the 5 points to this coordination piece. Whether if you have a consortium, tell us about that. If you have personnel, tell us about that.
like that?
So 10, 5, and 5.
I thought like 5, 5, 5. So the first 2 collapsed, worth 5.
We just added 5 more points to this section.
Okay. I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's why I'm here, Rebecca.
Thank you, Justin.
You're welcome. Is there
Sorry,
agreement?
I know we talked about this, but just to clarify, if they are not a part of a consortium, which is the case for one of the applicants, we would score their network, their ability to collaborate across the network they proposed, or would that we probably can't have something that they immediately can't get a score on, right? Or
Yeah, that's why I
I'm
was
misreading this.
thinking keeping the personnel dedicated to all the future stuff together. The current, because when I'm thinking of giving a score, the one I can separate, I think most easily is who are your current personnel. Whether and how much we value that is separate from if I can score it, I think, but I can separate that in an application, and then all their future personnel and how they would organize all of them across the consortium or not would be another bucket, and then advisory committee is as last. I would say like 5, 10, 5, or 5, don't hate me, 7.5 and 7.5.
You could also put the consortium coordination last, because in the NOI itself, the advisory committee collaboration comes before the consortium coordination. So you could put the consortium coordination as 0, because you're not giving points. If you don't want to give points for people who applied with the consortium versus for the applicant that did not apply with a consortium. So you're not adding a value to the actual consortium application. You're just, so that could be your 0 add right there, and then weight the other 2 categories, because those are requirements. Consortium coordination was not a requirement. It was if you did apply as part of a consortium, then X was needed to be supplied.
And it should support what you're saying in the previous two subsections.
Exactly.
I think that's where we started though, and we added 5 points to get consortium coordination some scoring ability, which I still think is important.
I think
Yeah.
if you, sorry, even if you're not applying with partners, you're setting up a partnership, and so we could score it on the ability to set up that partnership and what kind of governance structure there would be, because they will be having to coordinate with outside entities.
Yeah, I agree.
Yep, same. It's like
So what-
you're telling me about the staff, you're giving me an org chart, I'm reading about like their qualifications, all that makes sense, but how are you gonna actually organize all of these people to work together?
Yeah.
So it would look like this. Or no? Is that what you described?
I still see your PowerPoint, Justin. I'm trying to.
Here? Can you see now?
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
That's fine. I'm trying to go back and remember what are the bullets in the advisory committee collaboration. It's only, there's only like one. Do we think we would have enough variation there to give 10 points?
Yeah, because essentially that's worth 10 and everything else is worth 10 together.
Yeah.
So I wonder if we shouldn't do times 3 times 1.
And
Would you like me to? I'm happy to read off the advisory committee collaboration aspect, if you'd like.
I would think that for that, the reason I would support keeping the collaboration at a 10 is less about variation and more about weight. Because I feel like if they don't have a strong plan for being responsive to the advisory committee, and that's that would put us a little bit far afield of the purpose of this relative to their kind of current or proposed staffing. That's what I would vote for, keeping that as a 10 for a weighting. But it may end up just being like functionally 0, 5, 10 or something like that.
So Sam, what you were saying was make those two.
I was just saying as it's, I think if I can, I was saying keep it, I think the way you had it, which was times 2 for both of the bullets. So 10 points each.
Okay.
So equally important to collaborate with partners as they do with the advisory committee. I mean, I think we say it that way. It does make sense.
Is there any disagreement to go 2-2? Hearing none, I think we've decided on 2-2. And it looks like if there's no further revisions, I'll show you again. So it adds up to 50, or it adds up to 100 points. You've weighted knowledge and expertise the highest. You've weighted partnership, personnel and collaboration, and data use and security methods the same at 20. And then you've got research methods and finance at equally weighted at 15. You're also doing some sections on a 0, 3, 5 scale, data management and security, and financial management and proposed budget. You've also changed in research methods independence, which is a section on independence, to accountability and transparency. I think that's all the changes that you made. Oh, and you weighted in knowledge and expertise. You weighted expertise in research and your plan to leverage best practices equally, and added the vision setting piece to the plan to leverage best practices. You did a lot of work.
Yeah.
All right, do we want to just, for the good of the order, just all those in favor, yay, nay, if you're not, and then if there's division, we can do a roll call vote. So before you have the rubric that we've reviewed. All those in favor of using this rubric for the for the scoring of the applications, say yes.
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 Right. Opposed, say no. Hearing none. All right, then we'll proceed with this rubric. So what are we doing next? On review timeline. So I plan on setting you up with a SharePoint drive with the applications that only you will have access to. And I will, based off the rubric conversation, give you a scoring tool, probably an Excel document that has the rubric, so you can just plug in the numbers and put in your comments. I know I have October the 19th, but I am a little short-staffed right now. So I will strive for the 19th because I'm gonna have to build some of this stuff up with the rubric. And I was gonna give you until November the 2nd to submit your initial scoring. So that's about 3 weeks. So you could do an application a week. And then we would meet again, what do I have there, on the week of the 9th for our third meeting, where I would give you you would get to see where your tabulation stands. So I'll give you different cuts of where people are, and we'll facilitate another conversation on how you would like to proceed. Does that work?
Justin, I have a question, a logistics question.
Yes.
Do you want that now, or do you want me to hold it? I realize we're way over. I think we're way over time. I can.
Go ahead, because maybe it's something I've not thought of, or.
I am a little old school, and I'm assuming that these proposals are rather thick. Can I pick up paper from somewhere, or is it only going to be sent to us electronically? Should I go to my own office to print these out?
I only have it electronically, and because it is so lengthy, these applications are pretty lengthy with multiple appendices. I did not envision making a hard copy version for everyone. So
that's fine. I think I'll just choose what to print out judiciously.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. So housekeeping items, I sent around, I know there was a question from one of the review committee members for the full listing of the applicants and and their partners if they're doing a consortium. I provided that in email. We will work to get the RPP bibliography created. You also had some, we also wanted to do some conversation about the method to certify applications to meet a security standard, which may also include finding someone to come in and talk about best practices in data security at a future, at maybe at the next meeting or the fourth meeting.
Have you shared the NDA and conflict of interest DocuSign? I think last meeting you said that you were going to share it out, or do you want us to just like print it out and scan it?
Nagesh, do you?
You could just attach an electronic signature in the PDF. So it doesn't necessarily need to be DocuSigned. It just needs to be, you can just, I'm not sure if they're in PDF already, but if they're not, otherwise you can PDF it and then just enter an electronic signature. That would be fine.
Okay, so just use what you've already sent out.
Yep.
Okay, thanks.
And if you haven't, I mean, if anybody has any issues with that, feel free to reach out and I can try and convert it and put a place for you to sign. That's fine.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining. Thank you for being flexible on time and being very constructive. I think we have a much stronger product, and you will hear from me early next week to get you set up with your applications and also scheduling our third meeting.
Hey, Justin.
Yes.
you so
I'm so sorry. I have one other thing I just wanted to throw out there. I'm sorry, and I apologize. I realized. The one last thing I want to throw out there is I have found when I have done this for other things, the question of whether you were reviewing on like an absolute or relative to each other when you review these. I'm going to attempt to read them and then score because I do believe it's a bit of relativity to each other. But I'm just curious if others have reactions to that or thought about that or how they're thinking about that. There's a base standard for a number of things, right? To Rebecca's point, like if your data security does not meet the standards, then it does not meet the standards. But then there can be some, I have gone back and been like, oh, I was really hard on that person, on this applicant here, when I have seen how others have responded. And I'm just throwing that out.
Yeah, when I only have like a few, it's really hard for me to make them not relative to one another. If I'm, in doing like more large scale research almost, then I feel like I can have more fidelity to a rubric over a lot of responses, whatever form they're in. But this, I agree. I've had the exact same thing, and I feel like it's really hard not to see them as relative to one another when there's less than 5.
We cannot though, right? I mean, in processes before that I've been part of, like you can only go back and say, did I score them all with the same measuring stick, rather than score them relative to one another? But so is this process different?
Well,
or are we
like
just acknowledging how difficult it is?
At the end, I usually go back and if I feel like something doesn't make sense, if my standards change throughout reading them, which happens.
It does, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, because we don't say what's excellent or what's a 4. We just say the scale is 0 to 5 or 0 to 3, 5. We don't say what it is necessarily, I don't think, to make each, right? So I'm just throwing it out there. So
I think that goes back to the notice of invitation.
Yeah.
Right. Like, that goes back to the notice of invitation, that the notice of invitation prescribes the specifics as to what they needed to submit. And so I think, I dropped it in the chat, but taking a look at, those specifics as it relates to your scoring, and then as it relates to the response that was provided by the entity. They could have, either submitted in full and complete. They could have submitted it partial. There's outstanding questions. So I think for the panel's consideration, it's sort of a trifecta approach. You have a scoring rubric, you have the notice of invitation that prescribes with, I think, sufficient specificity as to what needed to be submitted and what needed to be explained, and then you have the submission itself. And so like while, you know, maybe there's some subjective relativity, there would also be this sort of objective review of the actual submission. I don't know.
Yeah, which is always the goal. Like I'm not trying to see just
Yeah,
on those. Yeah.
Totally.
Okay. Swing that.
You can't mess up.
So are we going to say that like a 3, a fair, is that just that you've met the minimal standards, or is a fair that you're like subpar, and good is that you've met the minimal standards?
I think that's open to interpretation.
I mean, I'd bet like this is a subjective proceeding. I mean, it's like your vote is your view. So how you come to your decision, we provide a rubric to help you come to your decision in a structured way that gives you all the ability to think about how you're framing your conversations with each other through the dimensions of the NOI and what the applicant is, to align your framework with what we ask the applicants to do. How you get from point A to B with your logic and how you, because ultimately it's your vote that selects the review committee, and that's subjective in nature the whole time. It's unfortunately not an exact science. So.
And I don't know if it matters as long as we are consistent with our own scoring.
Right. That was my greater point, is what if that ends up happening. I think that's exactly what.
Because it's not the statute contemplates a vote. It's not the rubric that is the vote.
Mm-hmm.
That's to facilitate, just to help you facilitate your thought.
Sorry, I'm just thinking of every eventuality. So I should just like read the reports, the submissions.
Might be a good thing if we use more rubrics in voting, Akeem. Maybe let's get on that. I'm kidding.
That's a problem for someone else.
All right. Well, if you have any additional questions, feel free to reach out to either me or Nagesh, and I will see you all very, very soon. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.